Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a very sad edition of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and back again this week, Grapeviney. Good evening, Grapeviney. How are you? Grapeviney.
I'm all right, Andy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Did you fall asleep there for a sec?
No, just getting a bit of a delay some of the time.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll see if we can't fix that up. Super Mikado, are you on delay?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm still in delayed shock from the final 3 quarters of Sunday, but I think audio-wise, I'm good to go.
Well, how are you feeling? Because reading your tweets, sometimes you seem to be a little unhinged, a little on edge. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling it, can I say? And can I give you a quick rundown of why this game almost was worse than the Geelong game for me?
By all means, you have your platform. Go for it.
Well, thank you. I know the circumstances were not as shattering in the defeat, and I know we never teased victory long enough. We teased it for about 3 minutes into the second quarter for the result to truly be heartbreaking in itself. But if I may indulge a personal story, just early this season, I accepted a new job, which will very soon have me working 24/7 shifts, 365 days a year.
Wow.
From not personally, but across 365 days a year. I'm not in some kind of slave labour scheme. So this starts pretty much right after footy season. So I have known full well from about round 2 this year that this is my last season for God knows how many years of watching every game, every practice game, even every AFLW game. It's the last season where I'm going to be able to arrange my life around football. And it's going to be back to the pre-2007 arrangement where my whole life got arranged around work. This was literally the only hesitation I had in taking this fantastic job, before family, before anything else. But I had to eventually decide to be an adult for once. I couldn't justify effectively costing myself thousands of dollars a year to watch footy. And now my problem is that I don't know if I'm going to have the same connection with the club that I do now. I know there's other people all over the place who miss games all the time and they go on fine, they don't care. But I feel like I've put more psychological energy, if that's a thing, into this club since 2007 than pretty much anything other than my immediate family. Forget work, forget everything else. So it's very hard to come to terms with the fact that for all intents and purposes, this era of my supporting life comes to an end at the end of this season, whenever it ends. And I think that's why I was going to this game and still am, because we're not out of it yet, so desperate just to see any kind of final. Like, I know we're not going to win the flag, but I just have all this season just wanted some sort of validation for the 12 seasons of complete insanity I've put into this club. The times where I have turned back work to go to games and lost money and paid hundreds of dollars to watch round 1 this year because I could have been working and got rewarded with us losing in a farcical circumstances. And look, and I know life goes on around me, so it's not all about me, but I'm the sort of person who goes all in on something, like 100%. So I'm really fearful that when/if we do either make a final or pull off a deep run into September, that is not going to mean as much to me as it would have now, last year, or even 2011 before we imploded on and off field. So that's why this season has personally meant so much to me, and it's why it's so deep inside me that it's going to be shattering if we miss out. And I appreciate the platform you've given me this year to come on and talk about it more, because as well as the blog, it's been very good to get it out, because I know this sounds stupid, but I've just been so wound up this year about having to get something out of this year before I go off into the sunset and become a part-time fan again. But now, even if Champion Data still thinks we're an 85% chance of making the finals, and they've somehow already factored in Port Adelaide losing to Essendon in the last game, I think we're going to miss out, which is just shattering. And as much as a 120-point loss was a fitting end to the original Fisted Forever decade, dropping from 4th to 9th, or possibly worse, and we could actually ruin the 9th gags by finishing 10th still, in the last 3 weeks is pretty much going to be an apt way to end my quest for respectability in these last 12 seasons. So I guess those of you who are involved at the heart of the Melbourne Football Club, I'm sure you're listening. I implore you to please leave nothing in reserve for the next 2 weeks, because if we miss these finals, I'm going to have a very hard time coping through the off-season, knowing that next year I'm going to be at best 50-50 fan. And there's going to be times where I'm not even going to be able to media ban games. I'm literally going to have to either pull a sneaky radio maneuver or just put my hand up and just admit that someone's going to walk in and say a score. And I'm not going to be able to follow the game like I want to. So that's why this game, the Geelong game was shattering in itself, but there was still a lot of buffer after that. Whereas this game, I just left thinking I was just so flat leaving this game, because I knew that we're so close to the end and that was so crucial to win that game, that it just really flattened me. I think my spirit went to the left, my soul went to the right, and I'm just a empty vessel of support for the next 2 weeks. So fingers crossed, and let's hope that the boys get the job done, at least in a minor fashion.
Well, it sounded like you were breaking up with the Melbourne Football Club, the Demonland podcast, Twitter, your blog, and everything all at once. Then,
well, it's not with intention. Well, the blog will carry on. I will be those of you who have read it in the past. I'll be obviously asking for guest reporters when I'll be unavailable to at least even see the game on delay. And I'm sure I'll be very much happy to appear again on your fine program next year. But it's going to be one of those situations where I'm either probably going to be working on a Wednesday night, or I'm not going to have seen the game that you're going to talk about on a Wednesday night. So it's really hard to come to terms with. So if anyone out there wants to do some pro bono sports psychology for me, I'd be very much appreciative.
Well, I must say I didn't feel as flat as I did in the Geelong game, but it's still painful, particularly when things had been sort of set up for us. The North Melbourne loss certainly helped us, and then to perform like we did, I don't know, what is it? Does it just come down to we can't kick straight? Is that all it is? Because we still performing in certain aspects of the game that well, if you look at the stats, we're getting all these inside 50. Is it just our execution of inside 50 and then converting to goals? Or are we just not good enough? Are we mentally weak?
I think everything we do seems to be at about 120% speed. Whereas if you sit back and watch what Sydney were doing, they were just masterful in slowing the game down. Like, if they'd got the first kick of the last quarter, they could have just chipped it around amongst themselves for the next half an hour, and we probably wouldn't have got a touch. And I think that's where, and it's funny because you look at their side, and half of them, there's barely any premiership, well, it's probably half premiership players left. They sort of just seem to roll in these blokes no one's ever heard of, and they just instantly click to the system, whereas we don't do that. But I just think it was the difference of poise versus just insanity. Like, we were just going crazy, trying to still play at 120% all the time, and you just can't play like that all the time. You can play like that all the time when you're playing Gold Coast, but you can't do it against a good team. And look, how many times this year we've had Geelong twice, we've conceded big runs of goals, Port Adelaide, Collingwood, this game. We just can't play like that against good teams, and I really hope that even potentially with Hogan's absence, that maybe there's a new plan. One of these gurus, our old mate Craig Jennings, or someone's got some master plan. They're going to press the emergency button and pull out for the next couple of weeks, because we just can't go on like that against good teams. We'll just get chopped up again.
Well, how are we going to? We'll talk about it later, but how are we going to stem that flow away in West Coast, and then coming back home against GWS, who I reckon are better than Sydney, and we'll see how they stack up against Sydney this week. But
They'll probably screw us and lose to Sydney and then still beat us.
Yeah. Grapeviney, your thoughts?
I don't have a lot to say on the footy, Andy. I actually wanted to come on and explain how to perform the Heimlich manoeuvre,
Okay.
just in case you come across anyone who's joking.
Are you proficient in this, or
Sorry?
are you proficient in the Heimlich manoeuvre?
I wish someone had been on the weekend because...
If you are, there's a job for you.
I mean, that's essentially what happened. Missed a few easy shots early, and then you could see the pressure written all over some of the players. And as Super Mikado said, we just don't have composure in those situations when we're under greater pressure. And we've seen it in X amount of games this year. And how many times have we seen where we've dominated for large parts of the game and won the inside 50 count and had a reasonable number of shots on goal and yet haven't come away with the points. So we've got 2 weeks to break the duck, to break the hoodoo. It's going to be more difficult than ever now with Jesse out. So, yeah, I must admit I lost faith on the weekend. It's the first time I've walked away and thought, no, I don't think we're going to do it now. I think it's just a bridge too far in Perth. And I agree with you. I think GWS are probably the best of Sydney, West Coast, of the last 3 teams. So we're going to find it difficult in round 23.
Well, that's certainly depressing. Cause,
usually it's me depressing the show at the end.
Well,
we've opened with depression, then we'll have to find something uplifting.
Well, the only faith I've got is that for Geelong 2015, Hawthorn 2016, and
even West Coast last year,
and West Coast last year, I've gone into those games thinking we are absolutely no chance at all of winning, and we've somehow managed to do it. So.
And all 3 of them were without
Fingers
Hogan.
crossed they can do it again.
All 3 of those games were when Hogan missed.
Yep.
Interesting.
Which is not to say that he is the, that's the difference, but obviously it shows that it's not fatal for us. But it's like trying to come back from 5 goals down in the last quarter, even though technically we're ahead, but now everything has to go right for us. Like there's reasonable scenarios where we could, not the GWS game might not even count. We could be out of it by the time that game starts. Like, we're looking at the probable scenario for me is that becomes a win and you're in game, and we all know how good we are at those. But there are very easy scenarios to factor in that will have us, even after this week, before the games next week even start, being knocked out. But there are even more scenarios where the round 23, as it's played out, towards us being the second last game, that we could, and I'll say show up because I hate to think what the crowd's going to be like if we're out by that last game, that it could be all for nothing, and we've just only got ourselves to blame.
Well, we will talk about later in the show all the possible scenarios. So I hadn't even in my own mind factored in that it's a possibility that that our game in the last round might not count. That we could be out of it by then. I didn't even think that was a possibility. So save that one for later. Stay tuned to find out why. Was there anything positive either of you can take away from the game?
Neville Jetta's tackle on Lance Franklin.
Yeah,
one of the greatest tackles that I reckon I've ever seen a Melbourne player lay. The issue being that about 30 seconds later the ball was going back the other way for a Sydney goal, but at the time that was one of the most courageous, and well executed tackles that I've ever seen. Other than that,
so nothing.
It was nice to see Vandenberg kick a couple of goals.
That was. I think one of the things that signalled the sort of the turnaround, or when we had a chance, I think, to really put a nail in their coffin. Forget all the missing, but there was one. Christian Petracca took a mark on the 50-metre line in the second quarter, I think it was, and he gave a dinky little handball off to Oliver, who had a dinky kick in. I don't know why Petracca didn't take the mark and go back and try and have a shot.
Spot on.
Confidence.
And it was interesting. I know we're going to talk about Allen Jakovich a bit later, but on the front bar he was talking about he wishes he'd see Jesse be more hungry for goal and not be so unselfish and not think of the team all the time. But it's the same for Petracca. You want to see players go back and take the moment in their hands. Sharing it around can go too fast sometimes, and that was a perfect instance of it.
Ironically, in the first quarter, there was a moment where he took a mark on the 50 and could have just hit a handball to Garlett to almost walk into an open goal, and he didn't do it. So it's just decision making at the right time, and henceforth Garlett then I think failed to have a kick for the next till about 5 minutes into the last quarter when he kicked that goal. It's just the decision making. We know it's a better team than 2 years ago. Like there's no doubt about that. But at the same time, it is like watching them play 2 years ago because there's just still no poise. Now we've got more poise against the crap teams, St Kilda game aside, where we can just dominate them. But we still have not learnt poise against good sides. And the offensive thing about that is you look at even 2014, I think it was, we beat a couple of top 8 teams. And I'm sure 2015, 2016, we beat top 8 teams. But the problem was we were then dumping games against middle range and rubbish teams as well. Whereas, again, other than the St Kilda debacle, which if we'd won that, we'd still be very much in the running for at least a top 8 spot, if not a top 4 spot. We've got that right now. But against good teams, we just get smashed. And it's bring back that stat from the start of the year about runs of goals against us. And it's not just the good teams who do it, but they're the teams that it's not as easy to get back against. And it's just ridiculous how many times that we have to launch these desperate dig out of a hole comebacks. And it's been going on for years. I've got a stat somewhere of all the times we've gone at least 4 goals down in a game and got it back to within a goal, which this game doesn't even count in because we didn't get it back to within a goal. But it's like last year, there was about 5 weeks where I think we did it 4 times.
Yeah, we won
in the middle of the season. It's just you're just waiting for the penny to. The penny's kind of dropped on the play because we get the ball in there. The defense has been undermanned, but they've stayed okay. But it's just they're still playing like a little league team, just all trying to run forward en masse. 3 guys running to 1 player, everyone trying to just get the ball forward, and it just lacks that poise.
We weren't clean with our disposal either. We had a number of players who had a lot of clangers. It's not good enough for a team that wants to play finals.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is with Sydney, like if they get the ball and they keep it for 5 minutes, that's one thing. But when you get the ball, you can't just then go and turn it over straight away.
I was quite disappointed with our small man brigade, our small forwards. We said with Jeffrey, didn't get much of a touch. Spargo did do much. I don't know. It's.
I thought had a terrible game.
He did. He had a number of clangers as well. I thought our backline performed well. Frosty did a good job on Buddy. I mean, it's hard to keep Buddy down. He's such a good player. McDonald was good.
They just showed one of Buddy's goals on 360, and it went 65 metres. You're coming up against a player who can kick a goal from 65 metres out. Yeah. It's incredible.
But I think at times, do we have any players that can sort of launch that? Because sometimes some of our kicks we've got no penetration in them.
Nah, I don't trust anyone outside 50. From a standing start, there's a few that can smash him on the run. You know, a Christian Salem, if he gets it on the run outside 50, he'll be a chance to dob it. But set shot wise, but I mean, why have to rely on that? You know what I mean? Like, it's good if you've got it, but you know, I'm a massive Tom McDonald fan. But when was the last time he led at the ball? You know, earlier this year, in the middle of the year, he was just running straight at the ball when it was coming in. Now it seems that he's sort of holding back and waiting for the ball to be kicked to him. Like, what has changed?
Well,
Is it that the structure's been worked out, or that they are doing something different?
Well, we just bomb it in anyway. Maybe that's just what he's expecting.
He just knows that's where he knows that's his best chance.
And watch out, Tom McDonald can take those marks, and I thought Jesse could, but he's not. And, I mean, it's not his fault. The ball's just being bombed in.
Including the Mark of the Year that will be. Yes. We'll be reminded of this game. It'll be like Howe's Mark of the Year all over again, where you have to be reminded of a really shit game every time they play it. And I'm sure Isaac Heaney will be sending Cameron Pedersen a cut of whatever he gets as the prize after Pedo set up the Mark of the Year with one of the possibly the worst forward entry kicks of all time.
We got a feel for Pedo because I think people have been sort of screaming all year maybe to get him in, feeling bad, and I think each time he's come in, he's sort of disappointed.
I don't think he was that bad. Overall, I don't think he played that bad, but that was just a moment of, again, 0 points.
Yeah.
James Harms was good.
Yeah, Harmsy's had a good couple of weeks. He did a good, fair job. He was manning Kennedy, I think, and to get 26 possessions himself, I thought he did all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I found it hard to hand out votes for this one, I must say. I thought I had Brayshaw, Harms, Salem, Frost as the top 4. But they all sort of, if it was one of those voting systems where you were just giving 12 players a certain number of points in total, you probably would have given 12 different players one vote. Rather than giving, someone 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or 3, 2, 1, because I really didn't think that, they were much chop. There was a few players like Vandenberg he kicked the goals, he presented, but, was he the man to keep the number one intercept player in the competition accountable when we all knew exactly what was going to happen, that we were going to boot the ball down his throat? I thought Tyson was okay again, had a few moments, but that's Tyson for you. Tom McDonald was okay, Oscar McDonald was okay, but it was just a flat performance. And I don't know, I thought Gawn, if he's 100% fit, I'll go he. There is no way. I'm not buying this, he pulled up sore after the Gold Coast game thing, any more than I'm buying Hogan just hurt his foot. I reckon Gawn is pretty much exhausted.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Gawn there has to be something up. We didn't have that presence around the ground, which we've seen him do, for the 19 weeks prior to this. Something's up, but we can't afford not to play him in these last two.
Exactly. We missed
injured
him.
Or not, unless
if we rested him
broken.
against Gold Coast, maybe it would have been tempting fate. But at the same time, we've left it too late now. Now he's got to play, and there's no one. You can't even bring another ruckman in and park him in the centre and then park Max at full forward or something. It's too late for that. And the one thing he did do, like Max Gawn on the weekend, was the taps.
Yeah,
there was a couple of ripper taps, but we just need that almost the extra centre half back and the extra centre half forward that he provides when he floats down there to take marks.
Yeah, he's an absolute star, but there's got to be something up with him. Can we play on the MCGs? Is the MCG an issue for us?
Well, we definitely prefer the smaller grounds or the narrower grounds, and it would seem at the moment, it probably is a bit of a problem. What's our record there this year? It's not very good, is it?
We've waffled a few crap teams,
You'll forget the Gold Coast.
But we've been cut up by the good teams.
Yeah, I think that's
And
what it
St
comes
Kilda.
down to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is pace the problem? Do we play it too wide? I don't know.
Oh, I definitely have some concerns over pace, I must say, and defensive pressure.
Defensive pressure for sure.
Yeah, and in the forward line, it's
There was no defensive pressure.
Non-existent.
nah. And that's where you let Sydney get the chain where they have 15 passes before the ball goes into the 50, because they just bang it straight out of defence, first time every time.
Every time they got out of defence, they've just found a man all the way up the line. There was a free man, someone running into a free spot. But every time we got the ball, we were either tackled straight away or we fluffed a kick or a handball. So, because of the pressure. They seemed to have no pressure when they were streaming down the field, but every time we got the ball, we were under immense pressure. And that's a problem, especially against the good teams, Sure, we've been able to beat the Carltons and the Suns by big margins, and other teams haven't, mind you. So we've got that down pat, but not, we can't.
Which only takes you so far, and then again, it doesn't leave any margin of error. Like if we'd beaten St Kilda, if we'd won every game we were supposed to win, plus the two Adelaides, which you might not have had at the start of the year, factored in, we'd be fine now. We'd be a 95% chance of making the 8 instead of this bizarre 85% that Champion Data are going with.
How are they getting? I'm baffled. I saw there's a thread on Demonland that Champion Data must be high because where are they getting that? How are they arriving at that statistic? Is that just based on our great inside 50 stats?
I think it's they run, however many scenarios, and then in 85% of them we make the 8. That's my understanding of how it's done. So it's not exactly
purely based
there's
on
some
statistics.
science behind it, but it's who knows? But how easily the other 15 knock us out. So I hope they're right.
It's a bit like the players' comfort meter in the old cricket pitch. Reports from Tony Gregg, they just arrive at a number and it's mysterious. You have no way of knowing how they've arrived at it or whether it's high or
But you
low.
go, that's good. That's good for the players.
Players' comfort level of 21.
Yeah, great. They'll feel good about that.
I'm just looking at some of the stats that they just put on Twitter not long ago, and if it'll come up here, likelihood of this is the likelihood of missing finals if going winless, and we're 81% chance of missing the finals going winless.
I can't believe we're 19% chance of making it.
And then this is the bizarre one. In their simulation, so however that's done, their eventual premiers, we're at 9%. I'll just at Richmond 32%, GWS 16%, Collingwood 14%, then us at 9%, then West Coast and Hawthorn on 8%, and Geelong on 7%, and Sydney on 6%. How are we above those teams?
Yeah, they must be factoring in West Coast being crap at the MCG, but they did beat Collingwood there not long ago, so...
Yeah. I don't know. Bizarre. So the MCG, can we ask the AFL, can we ask for our final round be moved to Etihad Stadium?
Well, we've played them there in the last round before.
Yes.
And me and 8,000 of my closest friends enjoyed a very exciting victory, so I'd be up for it.
Jesse had a good day that day.
Yes, he did. I think Harmsy did as well. I think he kicked 3 goals that day. Is there any thoughts in your mind, guys, the camp having any bearing on this form, the infamous camp?
No.
Well, it didn't stop us choking last year when Christian Salem had bricks dropping on his head, so I don't see where it factors in this year.
I mean, are we mentally weak? Is that what it comes down to? Or is it, as you said, talking about before, just we're too hurried in our
I don't
play,
think we're mentally weak because we, as we pointed out, we did win games against top 8 sides last year and the year before that, and even going all the way back to the early Roos years. So, no, we just, we're the almost team at the moment. Everything is almost absolutely perfect, but the piece that's missing is the composure piece is a difficult one to slot in.
And I think it's a bit harsh to put on the just to make a blanket statement about being mentally weak when 2 weeks ago we were all praising the ballsy performance against Adelaide in the last quarter when we were falling to pieces and held on to win through a lot of guts in the team. So, look, I don't think mentally weak, but perhaps not mentally strong. And I know that sounds a bit weird, but we might just be in the middle. It might be the difference between having a Max Gawn ruckman and a Jake Spencer ruckman. We're doing what we need to do for a baseline, but we're not elite in it. That is what we need at the moment. And we just need to stop conceding these massive runs of goals. And you have to question the leadership on the ground. And I see in the chat room a comment saying, Jones has been terrible. Yes, he was. He absolutely was terrible in that game. And I love Nathan Jones. And he's had his peaks and troughs this year where I think he's still very much a useful player. But you just got to ask, where's the on-field leadership? What's your Jordan Lewis doing? What's your Jones doing? Yeah, who's grabbing the guys by the scruff of the neck and saying, we don't concede this next goal. At the same time, who's apart from Viney, who else is gonna bring that? This is not a Chris Judd parachutes into Carlton style scenario on the cards. We're going to have to make do with what we've got. But I reckon that's a massive issue with us at the moment, the on-field leadership.
Well, it's been there all year, the not being able to stem those goals. So someone's got to fix something up very quickly because, we've got a caller on the line. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, g'day, it's Bin Man.
G'day, Bin Man. How you going?
Good, thanks. I felt compelled to join in the Angst Fest.
But by all means, we enjoy an extra voice to this cry fest.
Well, it was good timing in terms of the discussion about whether we're mentally weak or choking, or and I posted on Demonland something I've been thinking for a while today. I posted today. It's something I've been thinking for years, actually. We've just got really poor kicks in our side, and we have done for
years and years.
Decades.
Yeah.
Probably the late 90s. We've had terrible kicks, and under pressure, poor technique collapses every time. And I think we saw it on Saturday. The wind was up. It was really swirly at the G. I'm not sure if you guys were there. I certainly was. And it was one of those days where at the G, since the stands have been circular, it really swirls around. And we were struggling with it.
But they weren't.
When it rained, they weren't, because they've got good technical kicks. I posted today. I was sitting behind Kennedy's shot in, I think, the second quarter. We were struggling from 30 metres, and from about 45 metres on an angle, he kicked it, and it never looked like missing.
Yeah.
And you could argue maybe he's mentally strong, he's experienced, he's been there and done that, but I would also argue that perhaps that's true, but he's got perfect technique, and it never deviated. It arced at the point and went straight through. Whereas you've got Jesse, who's got his little skip and run. You've got T-Mac even, who he's got this new habit of looking up to the wind, up to the flags that he seems to...
Yeah, I saw that.
I thought he was looking at the countdown clock.
No, I think he was looking at the flags.
Yeah.
He may have
did that, and he did it last week, and he seems to have got the yips. I don't know, halfway through the Suns game, he's got the yips. And really, as I posted on Demonland today, I think we've got maybe 10, 11 above average kicks, and only 2 or 3 of them could be considered elite kicks. And you just can't win footy games with that, I reckon. I mean, under pressure, that's what folds technique. And, it could be argued that it's mentally weak, but, I use the analogy of golf swings. And under pressure golf swings that are poor collapse. And I think that's what we've seen for Melbourne. We really haven't had a good kicking side, I would say, since Danaher coached the side.
It was interesting that Jesse on the weekend, earlier in the year, his run-up was actually a lot more fluid, and he still had a little bit of a skip, but he was pretty smooth coming through. And yet on the weekend, it was a stutter like I've never seen before. You just sort of think, how can the technique change so much? And is it a confidence issue only? And why, if he's got a technique that was working, why wouldn't you just be doing the same kick every single time?
And I felt like he was running back even further than he normally does.
Yeah.
Go ahead, B-Man.
Well, I think the answer to that, Grapevine, is that he's had a poor technique for a long time, and under pressure you fold back to what you know. And he's only had a good technique for a very short period of time. And so under pressure he's almost always going to go back to his poor technique, which is the stuttering. And we just have so many... the statistic that they put up on Footy Classified, I thought was an excellent statistic. I had not seen it before. Our accuracy against the top 9 sides, I think it was chalk and cheese. We're number 2 in the league against the bottom 9 sides, I think it was, and we're like number 17 against the top 9 sides. And for me, that's about technique.
Can I ask, was that set shots or was that just total scores?
I think it was set shots from accuracy from set shots, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that is a problem. I think
huge.
If it was total scores, you got to factor in that against crap teams, we seem to be able to just walk them in from 10 metres out, like we did against Gold Coast. Whereas how many goals in this game here did we kick from, a few metres out dead in front? Not many. No. And even the shots, were just panic shots from distance.
But against that, we had a lot of set shots from the corridor. I mean, that is normally true, but not in that game. In that first quarter and halfway through the second quarter, we had a lot of our shots were directly in front.
30 metres out.
Geelong beat us in the last quarter. I think they scored 8 goals straight or 7 goals straight. Yep. Sydney kicked 6-1 or 6-2 in that second quarter. Richmond did something similar in that game earlier on. And you could say that's mental strength. I'd argue that sort of good technique would help your ability to replicate under pressure. But it's our biggest failure. I mean, we do it time in, but it's not just the missed shots that frustrate me on Saturday. It's those dump kicks into the 50 or the broken chains of goals or the scoring chains that get disrupted because someone misses a 30-metre kick. And as you said, Super Mercado, it's a good point. Our decision-making is at times terrible.
Yeah. I mean, there was one where Garlett was running back to goal with about 3 defenders against him, and they still kicked it to him. Now, A, why are you running back towards goal? B, where's the second option? And C, why just kick it to him anyway? I guess the C is that if you literally had nothing else and you weren't going to kick the goal, you may as well kick it to the contest and hope for the best. But it's just, I don't know, I don't want to, hang it on assistant coaches and stuff like that, but what are these forward coaches doing? What are these strategy people doing? It's the same stuff that has killed us for not only this year, but on and off for the last couple of years as well. It's like the same thing, and I saw this again on the weekend because now I'm tuned into it. It's the 3 players going to one guy carrying the ball, and then that guy just handballing it to a free teammate and push, off they go. Like, how can you not see that if you're they must watch these games over and over and over again. I don't understand how that's not addressed. Like, players not shepherding has been one of my bugbears for ages, but there is an argument that you want to be in the line to get the ball, so you don't want to take yourself out of it by shepherding. So I will argue that, but I can see where people are coming from. But I don't see where the tactical benefit of one player coming from someone at behind, one from the side and one from the front works. It just baffles me every time.
And the other thing that I think gets overlooked a lot is the kicking to advantage of a forward. There was one just perfect example where Aliir was up against Vandenberg. I think maybe it was in the second quarter. It was a really critical time, and the ball was kicked on top of both of their heads. And so if Vandenberg, it was a legitimate 50-50 ball, and all credit to O'Leary, he won the contest. But a good kick would have made it impossible for O'Leary to win that contest. All they needed to do is put it 10 metres to Vandenberg's left, and he would have been able to hold O'Leary off and take the mark 40 metres out. But
it was like the first time O'Leary had ever played a game. We just walked straight into that trap.
Oh, the amount of times we actually even just kicked to him was ridiculous.
And he actually gifted us a couple we got a couple of goals by him flying for intercepts that he should have absolutely nailed and flubbing them. So, you factor that in, take 2 goals off our score if he'd got those right. We're just, I just can't believe that we fell for that trap. I think we all saw it coming a mile away. When I knew I did when I saw the stats saying he'd been the best intercept mark in the comp for the last 6 weeks or whatever it was. It was like, well, Christ, here we go. We're just going to do exactly the same thing. You put Vandenberg on him, who tried his guts out, kicked 3 goals, but he's not jumping high into contests. He's not competing in that marking contest with O'Leary, who is. Maybe McDonald might have been. It's just hard to comprehend from an outside perspective how what seems to be us getting it so wrong. But I'm sure there would be someone from the inside would try and point out that it was the Swans getting it right, but I'm not buying it. I reckon it was we got it wrong.
And a huge issue, I thought, was, it was always going to come back to hurt us, but Hibberd coming out of that side meant that Fritches had to play back, and Fritches, he can't be in 2 places at once, and he's our best kick. Yeah. And you take him back to the half-back line because he is our best kick and he reads the ball well and he can intercept. Well, he's not going to be slotting goals from 40 because he's not at the end of it. And so who's up there? Jesse Hogan, he's lost his confidence with his run-up, as you said, and T-Mac has got the yips, and we're not kicking it to their advantage in any case. So, at least Fritch, if he has those kicks from 40 metres, he's just about the player I'd be most confident with the ball in hand, kicking from 40 metres, even more so than T-Mac in the last few weeks. So, it doesn't augur well for high pressure games in finals where you've got to kick a goal to win a game.
Got to make the finals first.
Melksham's the one also we need back at around half forward, kicking into the 50.
Oh,
absolutely.
No doubt we're a much better team with Hibberd and Melksham in the team. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Bin Man, anything else?
No, just that I still think we'll make it. I think we'll win this week, but I'm an internal optimist, which is probably an antidote to the angst. But I think we'll win, and like I hate to say it, but I think that it might be helpful for Jesse not to play this week, only in the sense that I'm really hoping that they will bring Wiedemann in and that he grasps the nettle, so to speak, and he leads at the ball and jumps at the ball. It's something that Jesse Hogan hasn't done in the last, month. And maybe it is something to do with his foot, but he just has not been impacting on the pack. The final thing I say is I'm super, super disappointed in Garlett's game.
Yeah.
There were a couple of cases where he just didn't straight line the ball, and he was really disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else? No?
No, I'll sign off. Thanks. I'll listen to the rest.
Thank you very much.
Good bit, man.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks. Bye.
If you want to give a call, just like that, 03 9016 3666. That's 03 9016 3666, or you can Skype us, Demonland31. Gary Lyon made a point saying we're in the 8 by default, obviously meaning basically we haven't beaten any of the top 8 teams or the top 9 teams. Obviously we can't beat ourselves. It's an issue, huge, massive issue. Whether you say we're in the finals or in the final 8 or in the 8 by default, whatever, that's the way the draw is, but we haven't beaten. If we don't well, obviously, if we don't win these two games, either or, we're not in.
Unless Port Adelaide lose their next two games.
Yeah.
Just keep the 9% theory. And that's when we'll be in the finals by default, if that happens.
Yeah. But extremely disappointing the year to date that we haven't been able to take any scalps, and I'm not even counting Adelaide in that scalp factor, given the year they've had. So for me, that's a fail. Very disappointing. I love the fact that we were able to start beating those bottom 4 teams, bottom 6 teams, all the teams just out of the 8, well, with the exception of Geelong. And, Geelong were a kick in it. Port Adelaide a kick or so in it. Sydney even a kick or so in it, but disappointing for me.
Yep.
Casey. Poor Casey. They've got players dropping like flies out of the Melbourne team. Our players getting injured, and then we've got to play them in the ones in our ones. So Casey has no one left. They've got to finish on top of the ladder, and might go out in straight sets.
That's nothing new for Casey.
No, it's happened before. Either of you watch the Casey game this week?
No, I didn't.
No, I didn't. I just saw some text updates on it. I saw they had to dig themselves out of a pretty reasonable hole against Sandringham, who are, I believe, not particularly good this season. But like you say, when we're pinching all their players, and even now we gave them Bernie Vince, who's done for the year. We took out Hunt. They're not getting him back because he's injured. There's every likelihood that someone like Kent might be in the mix, even just to travel with the team this week.
And Wiedemann.
It's going to be hard, but I guess they'll get a couple of players back.
Yeah, they'll probably
finals. Like they'll get Pedersen back.
Yeah,
he'll play. I don't think Spargo. I reckon he's cooked physically, so I wouldn't bother rolling him back in for another 3 or 4 games at the end of the year. But I think certainly Pedersen, certainly Jake Kennedy Harris, 100% will go back and play finals at Casey. So they should get a few back, and they've done enough now that I don't know. I'm assuming that their double chance is confirmed by this point. That I think they can still have a decent crack at it.
Yeah, you would assume that Wiedemann's going to come out this week, but Pedersen might go back in. I'm just going on, with Jesse out, Wiedemann's got to come in.
Or you throw Pedersen forward.
Yeah,
but is it time for wacky moves, or is it time to just be conservative? I saw someone the other day saying, just pick all smalls to go around McDonald, and it's like, yeah, it could work, but when it doesn't, Simon Goodwin's going to be crucified for it. So I can't see them doing anything too wacky.
Yeah, I guess now's a good time to talk about changes. Obviously, Jesse comes out, Hunt goes out. Weed in for you? Grapevine?
For me, yes, definitely the weed. Now's the time.
So,
it just structurally, I think we need him. Haven't been impressed with Pedersen this year, and didn't come into the year thinking he was the man anyway. Would have all preferred Wiedemann to Pedersen in every instance this year, but can we expect that both Hibbert and Melksham are both definitely back this week?
Yep.
They say that they're available. There was an article earlier in the week with them training. I think we almost have to play them.
And is Josh Kennedy playing? No.
I don't think so.
I think it's still up in the air. There was some talk about it being a chance, but surely with what they've got locked away, like obviously they want the home final. They'll be desperate for the home final, but they wouldn't want to. They wouldn't want to do a Melbourne and rush him back too quickly and have him miss the rest of the season.
Just while we're talking injuries, the spate of foot injuries, is there any common link to all these foot injuries, or it's just bad luck? Because we've had a number of them over the year. And
haven't you seen the expert opinions on Demonland?
Well,
from a range of foot specialists. It's everything
and
from
turf specialists.
Playing in Darwin.
I know that. Well, I don't know if you can ping it on Darwin, but I have seen people blame the surface of Gosh's paddock, and I don't know if it's a hard surface or not.
There'll be someone down there with a penetrometer,
yeah,
Dr. Turf style, sticking it into the ground at Amy Park this week and coming back with the readings and letting us know if it is considered a hard surface or not.
And give us a player's comfort rating at the same time.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, there have been a lot of foot injuries. So yeah, let's hope that it's not the training.
It's moving
surface.
up from the toe now.
Yeah,
started at the toe, now it's into the middle of the foot.
See,
Next stop's the ankle.
Yes.
We were talking about amputations of toes preemptively, but I don't think we can. Well, I think when you start going up the leg, it's going to do more harm than good.
Rebuild them, RoboCop.
George on the outer just saying in the chat room that Kennedy's out until finals, so we don't have to worry about him until week 1 when we travel back over to WA.
So who is there?
That will be the ultimate piss take if I wait all that bloody time for a final and then we have to go to WA.
That would mean that means we finish third. So
yeah, I'll go. I will buy some rinky-dink tie. I'll go on a bloody Panamanian cargo ship if I have to, but I'll be there for that.
Well, I'm flying over to Perth this week, and I tell you what, it's not cheap, so you might have to take a cargo ship over there. So, yeah, if Melk and Hibbard come in, who obviously Hunt's out, so Hibbard for Hunt. Melksham, who goes out? Do one of the small brigade go out?
Oh, I think Spargo 100%. I reckon he's cooked. He's had a decent start to his career, but I reckon now just pack him away for the year. And look, originally I had Kent in as well, which might have been overkill. But now, having to replace Hogan as well, I think I might leave him out. I'm not as... I feel an affinity with the it's time factor for Wiedemann, but I also have an affinity with the fact that he gets about 7 touches a game.
Well, I can see that happening.
And I'd much rather Tim Smith in that case, although I'm told he was kicking like he had a wooden leg in the twos last week.
Okay. Well, look, Spargo, I agree, probably does look cooked, but he's exceeded all expectations this year.
Absolutely, yeah. It's with complete respect that I say that. Yeah. But he's young, go put the feet up. I don't think carting him to the other side of the country, where he could barely kick 40 metres, is going to end well for us.
Yeah.
You mentioned Kent, is there a possibility they could drop Spargo and Garlett and bring in sort of either Melksham and Kent or Melksham and Hannon?
Yep.
Go the two.
Very real prospect.
Yeah. I'd say Garlett would be lucky just for the fact that it's such an important game. It's like, how much do we trust him to show up? Look, I didn't think Candy Harris was that great. But again, how many changes am I going to make? That's the thing. It's just, I don't want to go crazy on the squad and just start pretty much plucking anyone at Casey who's fit, which is not many of them, and putting them into the side. As the question is, if we bring Smith, Wiedemann in for Hogan, what happens to Pedersen? Yeah. Do we need that extra tall down back against the Eagles?
Well, they got who they got down back? They got Darling,
and then you got your Nathan Vardy type sort of random appearances.
Lacroix.
I mean, without Kennedy and a randomly appearing Nick Nat, it's not exactly a terrifying defence. So he might not be required. But then the question is, who are you bringing in to replace him? does almost, Hibbard come in for him? Oh, well, I guess Hibbard's coming in for Hunt. So
yeah.
Is there another defender we need somewhere? Because we haven't got many now that Vince is out as well. It's a tough one. But I think 100% Melksham and Hibbert are coming in, and 100% we know Hunt and Hogan are going out. And I think Spargo definitely as well.
All right, be interesting selection table this week. If you want to join the conversation, 039016 3666, 039016 3666, or Deemerland31 on Skype. How good was it to see Allen Jakovich back in the limelight this week? And you read Twitter, anything online, people absolutely love the guy. The front bar team were fawning over him to the point
they
where
were fawning over him so much that they mucked it up, didn't they?
I was going to say, to the point where they wouldn't let him get out a story. So if you do want to hear Allen Jakovich stories, go to deemerland.com, find it, the interview, you'll find it on the front page. He pulled
the highlights were good though, weren't they?
Oh, how good was seeing some of the highlights. There was one, and we all know the scissor kick, the famous one, but do you remember the other scissor kick that they showed on there?
I did when I saw it.
Yeah. Completely had gone out of my memory, but that was beautiful, the one against
I'd forgotten
Carlton.
two things. One, how good he was on the snap from 40 metres out or on the turn, and how good he was on his left as well.
There was that one against Collingwood on the boundary, so that snap on the left.
I mean, that kind of stuff was just sensational. Then all those, in the third series of highlights that they showed, where most of his kicks were on the run from the boundary line.
Yeah.
And he had this incredible kicking style where his boot just went straight and he put all his energy behind it and kicked as hard as he can. And it looked like some of the kicks travelled in a funny way through the air, but they all hit the target.
I think what those highlights showed me, you talked about the snaps. Where is that in our team at the moment?
I was going to say...
Not to go back to the misery fest, but... How many times do they just drop it in the lap of a guy standing on his own in the square? I remember, I'm sure not everyone has watched the 1998 Hotter Than Hell video as many times as I have, but there's a David Schwartz one against North Melbourne in round 2 that year where he just basically kicks the cover off the ball from about 40 metres out on the boundary in a snap. If that was these days, he'd either get hung for missing, or he'd try a dinky pass, or he'd just chip it to a bloke standing on his own in the square. Like, we may as well hire Jacko as our bloody forward coach. The way those highlights were going.
I was going to say, while we're talking about it, we've got no penetration in our kicks, particularly those snaps. Every single one of them goes to the goal line. None of them go through post height, half the post height. Clary did a snap the other day, and I've seen him snap from 40 out and go through. Have they lost penetration in their kicking? I don't know what's happened. And this one landed, I think it went through a point, but it went through sort of almost, shoulder height.
It's like we play apologetically. Like, everything we do, it's like, they try and handball it 27 times to a guy running into goal, and it's like everyone doesn't want to be the person. Oh no, I'm not I'm not greedy and all that. And there's so many. You just want to eventually have a bloody shot. Especially last week, we're missing everything else. Just have the shot, and then you got there was a second quarter. I can't remember if it was before or after that obvious deliberate in the forward pocket where we should have had another shot. But Tyson got it 50 out, and he thought about 7 different options before eventually he just went, bugger it, and just had a shot. Whereas I don't think anyone would have hung him if he'd just had the shot straight away, instead of thinking he was going to find options in a all over the place forward line. It's just, like I said, we just play like we're embarrassed almost, that we're embarrassed to be good.
And once again, we got off talking about Allen Jakovich to go back to the depression session.
Did you guys see his halftime interview
with
Russell Robertson? I didn't actually see it at halftime. God knows how I missed it, but I saw it when they posted it on Twitter. I reckon we should have just conceded the second half and just had an hour of chat with Jacko and Mrs. Jacko.
Well, I actually just watched that today. It's great that he still loves. He seems to still love the Dees, which is really good. He said it when we interviewed him, but you got a feeling that he really did love the Dees still, and it's great that he's still around. I love the Jackanaissance. I saw that on Twitter. It's great that he's back in the limelight.
And I think he went, you could see on social media, with the past players. There was a past players function, obviously on Sunday, so I think he went to that, and it seemed like he had a great time catching up with the likes of Rodney Grinter and others. So that would have been great for him, given that he's been out of the limelight for so long.
Oh, it was just great seeing him. And seeing those, I love the highlight the stat that they showed, 54 games where they compared all the full forwards, how many goals up to 54 games, and he blew them out of the water. I think he was 40 up on the next closest.
What gets forgotten is, he did mention that obviously his first game was a total bloody disaster. We kicked 2 goals. His second game, when he came back about 7 or 8 weeks later and played, I'm pretty sure it was against Adelaide at Football Park, because I think there was a bit of, old school SANFL baiting going on from the Adelaide fans. And that was a dud as well. He might have kicked 1 that night and he got dropped again after that. It was just such an explosive part of a season that, the likes of which we hope to see again. And he is definitely on my list of people I blame for roping me into this MFC lifestyle. He's not as guilty as Murray Renstead for not knocking Melbourne out of the finals in 1988, but he's certainly on the list. But I forgive him because he's given so much joy. He gave so much joy for about a season and a half, and then we're all so bloody awestruck by that season and a half. We're still talking about it 25 years later.
What they didn't mention on the front bar when they were talking about how many goals that he kicked in his short career was that period between the first game he played and coming back in the team, him kicking 60 goals in the twos. They didn't mention that, and that's I know it's the twos, but still, it's a lot of goals to kick in.
Correct, 120 odd, 130 odd goals in a season.
Yeah. It's pretty good. So, it was great to see Jakovich back in the limelight, and I'm happy that we played a part in sort of putting his name back out there. So, well done.
Can I say how disappointed I was as a 10-year-old that he didn't play in the 1991 Reserves Grand Final? Okay. I tuned in that morning just thinking that, of course they can. They want to win a Grand Final. They'll bring Jacko back. Nah.
Why didn't he play? What was the reason? Was he injured at the time? Or?
I guess they just thought they were well beyond the point of playing him in the reserves by that point. It allowed George Gorozides to roll him for the reserves goal kicking that year. So, not that I was looking at that at the time, but and then we proceeded to go out and lose to the Brisbane Bears, which was a great Melbourne disappointment.
Yes. So there was another thing this week. They announced the squad for the 22 under 22. 6 Ds in that squad. Oliver.
Because there's a shortage of squads.
Oh, they love squads.
This isn't there.
I'm all for a squad that features a lot of Melbourne players in it. And what's telling is we had the 6 players. Oliver, who's in it? Oliver. Brayshaw, Harms, Nibbler, Omac wasn't in it this time. No, I don't think. Track was in it, and Fridge. Yep, and Fridge. But I heard was there no Richmond players? No Richmond players and two Tigers.
Two Richmond players and no Eagles.
No Eagles. So. Top 2 teams, so I guess experience.
I guess that's where you're at that point.
Exactly.
why we haven't had a Rising Star nomination since about Clayton Oliver, because you're obviously someone like Bailey Fritsch is very unlucky to have not qualified for it, but it's because we've started to not have to rely on kids all the time.
Yeah.
So I tell you that Oscar McDonald, round 21, 2016 was our last one.
2016. So we got none last year?
No.
Ah, interesting. And I reckon at times there were a couple of games where Spargo was probably a little bit unlucky. Perhaps there were games where he had a couple of goals and some tackles and score assists and all that, but his possession count probably wasn't quite high enough.
Can't play 4 quarters yet.
Yeah. So that's the that's the 22 under 22. So well done to those 6 demons in
and
that.
what do they get? Is
huge
this
honour.
team going to be compiled to play the
Well, maybe
22 over 22 or something?
that would actually not be a bad idea. I'd watch that, but I'd probably watch almost anything that you put me in front.
Do you think the club will make a commemorative 22 under 22 Guernsey that they'll sell for $350?
Well, I've said
on the Demon Shop.
I said on Twitter this week that that if you purchased every jumper that the Dees have played in this year, you could start your own league, because there's been
we're at North Melbourne levels of alternative jumper.
So we've got a new one coming up next. Well, not this week, the week after. Did you see that one? It's a heritage type Guernsey.
And is it, if you bought it, you get your name on it?
Yes, I believe so.
What a day to have your name on the Melbourne Football Club jumper.
Well, it could be a great day.
Don't you love the heritage of a huge sponsors logo?
Yeah, they whacked that on. It's quite prominent. Well, I guess you have to have that. Well, now we might just go back into depression mode. Super Mikado, do you want to give us all the possible scenarios? How many scenarios are there? Likely.
I'll give you my scenario that I've got as likely. My likely scenario is that we finish 10th.
And that happens how?
That's losing both games. Yep. That's Port Adelaide losing to Collingwood but beating Essendon.
Yep.
That is Sydney losing to Hawthorn in the last game. So even then, that keeps us relatively close because I've got them coming 9th.
Yep.
That's North beating Adelaide.
Is that GWS beating Sydney?
Yes.
So I've got a sneaking suspicion they'll knock off GWS this week.
Well, that's very bad for us if they do that. I've still got North beating Adelaide, but I reckon that could go the other way, which would be good because it would piss North Melbourne off out of the conversation, technical term, once and for all, because they're going to thrash St Kilda in the last round. It's obviously Hawthorn beats St Kilda this week. Hawthorn, I've got them beating Sydney next week, but again, that's not a solid 100% result. But I think if Sydney win either of the next 2, they go out of the conversation with us. It comes down every time these teams win a game. We sort of go out of the conversation with them, and it thins the field of people we're playing against.
So we're just playing against Geelong's percentage. Is that?
Yeah, that's one of the factors. If we win a game,
if we win a game,
we win one of the next 2, and it really doesn't matter which one. I think because West Coast and GWS, neither of them will be against us. So winning one game vaults us to 6th on my ladder and pushes North Melbourne out. But then if we factor in Adelaide beating North Melbourne, which is probable, then Port Adelaide come back in. Port North, we're against both of them. We're against Geelong, but I know they've got to make up a lot of percentage in these 2 games, but are we reasonably confident in any way that Fremantle are going to put up a decent bloody fight at Cardinia Park? Because I'm not confident the Gold Coast are.
No, Gold Coast will not. They will absolutely. From watching us play Gold Coast, Geelong will know that they might need to bump up their percentage.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've factored in Geelong beating Fremantle by 70 and beating Gold Coast by 110, and us losing to West Coast by 20 and GWS by 30, and we still finish 1% ahead of Geelong. So there's not a lot of margin. You know, we've talked all year, well, at least we've got the percentage. You know, that's going to save us in a straight fight against another team. Well, it will save us in a straight fight against any team other than Geelong, I think.
Oh, they're pretty wide parameters. That's pretty unlikely for Geelong. They'll thrash one, but I can't see them thrashing both.
I think, I'm more confident of Freo putting on a Ross Light special
range.
So
if Freo hold it to a 20-point loss or something this week, that'll be almost as good as a win for us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I haven't even been able to get my head around this, and I haven't done any of the ladder predictors for this case, but people are saying we can make it on 12 wins. How is that possible?
Port lose the both games.
Port losing both. All right, let me just... Oh, why do I have them beating Collingwood? All right, so we lose both. But then Sydney have to lose... Does Sydney have to lose both?
I'm confusing myself now.
I don't know. We still come ninth with Port losing both. And us losing both.
I've confused myself with it.
Who are we meant to unseat there? Because we've got to unseat two.
We're unseating Port.
Yeah, Port. In my scenario, we've got where Port lose both. Port are 10th and we're 9th, and us losing both as well. So I must have Sydney winning.
So we need to.
No, that's even with Sydney. Yeah,
because Sydney's already a win ahead of us.
Yeah, yes. So
we would need Geelong to lose one of the next two.
No, well,
which is not going to happen.
So no.
Okay, so
no, we can't get in on.
Let's
no
not
wins.
just factor in Port in that case.
That doesn't help us
So
because Geelong.
Much required.
Yeah. Someone made a very good point in the game day thread on the weekend that it all gets so confusing. They're asking who we're barracking for today, Melbourne or Sydney. And it gets a bit like that. It's the permutations and combinations are too much for me. They overload my brain, and I'm not wired to handle that kind of information.
So if we win one, if we win one, what can knock us out?
Port winning 2, Geelong winning 2 by plenty.
Geelong's going to win 2. So
if we went up to 52 points now, Port Adelaide won both games, they'd be 56. They'd be above us.
So it's Geelong. It's Geelong percentage.
Geelong would win 2. They would be on the same points as us, so it would come down to percentage. And if North beat Adelaide and St Kilda, their percentage would be too far away, so they're not going to be a factor. North and Essendon are not a factor just because of the percentage. But Port and Geelong,
it's really just it's Geelong. It's Geelong are the fact. Geelong's percentage is the factor.
But we could always they could go up from the ladder where it is now. We're 7th, Port's 8th, Geelong's 9th. If Geelong jumped us both, but we stayed above Port.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's because you can have Port just winning only one, and us winning one, and we make it ahead of them.
What I don't want is somehow Essendon to pull off a bullshit win against Richmond this week, thus leaving potentially the Essendon Port game being either of them jumping us without us if we lose both games, which we won't have lost the second game yet, but we will be coming towards the second game.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What was your scenario? You had a scenario where even our last game, it won't mean anything, that we won't be able to get in. I'm not seeing how...
well, it's because we're the second last game.
Yes, so... But I can't see what scenario...
This might be riveting radio here while I try and do the mental arithmetic of working this out.
Because... The way I
So
see
Geelong
it, we're
have won
playing
both.
Geelong. We're
Let's
playing.
let's say we lose this week.
Yep.
Port Adelaide beat Essendon.
Yep.
Or Port Adelaide beat Collingwood and Essendon.
Yep.
Geelong have beaten. I guess. Yeah. Okay. The only thing the game can't start with us being out, but it can start with us having to have a number of points that we have to beat GWS by.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. We might need to claw back percentage to get Geelong.
Correct.
All right, so we're basically playing Geelong's percentage and a win.
Christ, honestly, we really, we need Fremantle to do a big Ross Lyon 18-0-0 job and just lose 62-78 or something, or 45-50. Like that bizarre Port Adelaide game where they somehow knock them off. But I'll take a narrow loss for the equation. But we really need Freo to put in the ballsy performance that they're probably not capable of this week to make it that. Yeah, I wouldn't entirely rule out Geelong pulling out a 186 job on Gold Coast in the last game, but it's unlikely. And look, we just got to win. It just goes without saying.
Yeah.
But I still think it's going to come down to win and in the last game.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, that it's not percentage.
Although I am worried. That's why North Melbourne losing to Adelaide this week will be so crucial.
Go ahead.
Freo did push Geelong at Cardinia Park last year, and actually it was the same week that we knocked off West Coast.
Yep, more of the same, please, Freo.
Yeah.
Heave ho.
But you know what? Past results mean nothing.
Exactly. It's like a super fun.
Absolutely nothing. All right, well, there we go. We're in a percentage race with Geelong as long as we win a game. We did have a caller on the line. I had them on the line waiting, and they hung up. So if you do want to call back, caller, please do so. I'm off to Perth on Friday. Any advice how to survive in a hostile environment?
Having disgraced myself at Cardinia Park, I'm probably not the best person to talk about staying calm in hostile environments. But I am I'm full of admiration for your trip. I was about to call it your insane journey, but that will make you even more nervous. So I'm full of admiration for your trip.
Well, I have purchased tickets. I went to one of those reseller ticket sites because I didn't want to rock up to the ground without a ticket, obviously. But I also wanted really good seats at this beautiful looking stadium. It does look like a nice looking stadium. So I've bought tickets on the wing, and I paid quite a little bit more than I would have liked to for a ticket, but I was quite happy to get a really good seat. And I must be in amongst, or like I'd be the odd man out, certainly. I'll be it seems like they're the type of tickets that members only type ticket that I've got. So I'm really in enemy territory. And I hate it when, and Grapevine, you'll know, we don't like it when there's opposition fans in our Melbourne-only area.
Did you notice there was a little bit of a tete-a-tete on the weekend?
I was very close to having words as well.
Very early on.
Yeah, there was where Grapevine and I are in a Melbourne only section. Well, it's not only, you can bring guests in, and it's generally frowned upon.
You shouldn't be able to bring bloody guests in. It's ridiculous.
Well, if you do, they've got to
sit
not
down
be
and shut up.
Yeah, exactly. They can't get lippy and barrack too hard, and I think that's the way I'll go into the game. And as I said on Demonland today, I'll sort of wait until I know that we can't possibly fluff it if we do get into a position where we're winning until I might start. And I also said I'd make sure I could outrun at least most of them.
Well, you're nobody's guest, so you've got a bit more, I think, scope to go off your nut and be controversial. But if you're the person who brings someone in,
yes,
surely it is incumbent on you to say either before, mate, you're sitting in a Melbourne section, sit down, shut up, or just to not do it in the first place. You don't have to sit in your reserve seat. It's not a grand final. There's 50,000 seats free in the stadium. If you need to bring someone in who's not a premium member, especially if they follow another club, bloody go and sit elsewhere. Queen's birthday, there was just this lone Collingwood bloke on the other side of my aisle in the Red Legs area.
Yeah.
And he wasn't with anyone. And it's like, where did this numpty come from? And he's sitting there happily clapping every time they kicked a goal. And it's like, I don't even understand how this guy got in here, let alone why it's like he took a wrong turn and accidentally walked in there and just thought he was in general admission. It was bizarre, but yeah, I don't even think they should be allowed to wear opposition colours in the reserved areas.
Wasn't there an issue, Melbourne Adelaide last year at Footy Park, or whatever it's called these days, Adelaide Oval, with Melbourne supporters in an Adelaide sort of only area? I can remember.
I saw
a
video of a kid singing the song in in middle of all these Adelaide fans.
No, that was a video. I think of just a guy brought his son. I think, but there was
Just
actually there was sort of a.
Then there was also the woohoo guy, the guy who woohoo.
Yeah, that was against Port
a couple of years ago over in Adelaide.
Yeah, no, this was actually some Melbourne people were invited into a Adelaide function, and I think caused a bit of a ruckus.
And I think it's the same thing. I'm not just going to say just because it's Melbourne fans, that's a good thing. You know, it's. I think if you're on the terraces, if you're there with yourself, you know, go for your life. But I think when you go as somebody's guest, it should be on them. I'm sure if I'm not an MCC member, but I'm sure if you take someone as a guest into there and they make an absolute goose of themselves, that surely you're getting an email or a call or something saying, "Could you please not bring complete morons into our area next time?" Or is that a fundamental misunderstanding of the MCG and you're not actually allowed to bring guests into the MCC? I don't know. But either way, these people, you've got to tell your mates to calm down and not disgrace themselves amongst footy fans who are paying a premium price to sit somewhere, often to get away from opposition fans. That's pretty much the only reason I sit there, because the guaranteed grand final ticket's never going to bloody come into play. And I've pretty much the only time I've sat there this year was Queen's birthday, because I quite literally thought that is the only place I'll be able to go in the ground that is away from Collingwood fans. And then there's this clown in the aisle opposite me having the day of his life while we bloody went down the toilet. It was ridiculous.
Yes, it is. Are you worried about the umpires on the weekend? I'm worried about them every week. Grapeviney, West Coast umpires.
What is it? The scream of affirmation or something?
Well, I don't know if you've seen.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get crucified.
I don't know if you've seen the stats, but West Coast have an overwhelming home ground advantage in terms of free kicks from umpires. So we don't get the umpires in Melbourne, so I can't imagine we're going to get it there.
Just imagine this is the day that they do the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah. Grapeviney?
I actually thought we were a bit clumsy on the weekend with some of our tackling and getting in the back, and I thought we didn't necessarily get the run of the umpires, but more often than not we deserved it.
There were a couple that, again, for me, it's often not the ones that get paid. It's the ones that don't get paid. And a few times they didn't dispose of the ball properly, in my eyes. None of them were paid.
I saw one ripping throw in the last quarter by one of our players. It was one of the most blatant throws you'll ever see in your life. Because when I had a bit of a tantrum at the Sydney goal at the end of the third quarter, I shifted from the Ponsford to the Olympic via the Cluedo-style pathway that they have on the top level that bypasses the MCC. And I ended up in a perfect position to see this. I can't remember who it was, but they basically just rugby passed it out of a pack. And because it was facing the boundary line, they got away with it.
These things.
So that was something that went right for us.
That little walkway that that connects the Olympic to the Ponsford.
Oh, I can't believe it took me so many years of
There's
loyal
like a
Ponsford service to find it.
mezzanine level stairway.
Yeah, and I only found it because I think we were losing, not surprisingly, at one point last year, and I was skulking around. I was in the Olympic stand to start with for some reason. I was skulking around angrily, and I thought, I'm just going to walk up this staircase and see where it goes. And next thing I'm like, bloody hell, I'm in the Ponsford stand. This is it is like Cluedo, where you just go from one end of the house to the other.
The MS Phoebe in the chat room has said how many 7-metre kicks were paid marks, and that's another one of my little peeves at the moment. There's a lot of really short kicks.
You see that everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not just Melbourne games. I've seen it in a number of games I've watched on TV.
And then they'll randomly just ping one that's perfect distance and call play on.
Yeah, umpires. Yep. Anything else, boys? Anything I've missed? Anything you want to bring up?
I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah. Hoping for the best.
Fingers crossed, that's all.
I really wish it was earlier than 3:20 Sunday afternoon.
Yep.
Like, could we just not get this over with on Saturday afternoon or something? Because I'm not sure I can enjoy the rest of my weekend knowing that this is the going to effectively be the final act of my weekend and possibly the final act of my season.
Well, that's why I'm going to Perth, because it'll be 1:20 for me. Be a nice early game.
Yep. And you can just walk back across the Nullarbor if it all goes horribly wrong.
That's what I will be doing. Yeah. I think that's all, boys. Super Mikado, you want to plug your stuff?
That's a reasonably positive note to finish it on.
Yeah, walking back across the desert. Well, you can get the blog while it's still
active,
hot, fresh, and relevant at demonblog.com. You can get the historical bonanza at demonwiki.org. That will, of course, not be going anywhere. And that is, of course, something that I can just tinker with any time. I'm currently doing some 80s newspapers and putting information in about that. And, of course, the book, if you'd like to read about other times when the Melbourne Football Club has let you down and stabbed you in the back, although I would actually say the weekend was more of a stab in the front because I could see it coming from a mile away. I've got a few copies in stock now. I've just received them hot off the presses from Amazon. So there's links to that on demonblog.com and DemonWiki.
Is there any chance of an addendum for that book?
Well, see, I always said that I would do the next one at 5 seasons because 10 seasons was just too much. It's literally, like I think I said to you guys the first time I was on, I'm pretty confident that it's the longest sports book in the world ever written. So I said I'd do 5 years or if we won a flag. Now, obviously, I'm preparing to do 5 years. But, Jesus, the first 2 chapters will be absolute sizzlers last year and this year. So who knows where it's going after that. But no, I'm not. It's like the famous list of misfortunes that have befelled the Melbourne Football Club that I posted about 4 years ago that occasionally seems to rear its head. Every time something goes wrong, you'll start seeing it getting linked again. And everyone's always like, when are you going to update it? When are you going to update it? It's like, I'm not updating it. That was a snapshot in time. You can all put together your own disasters from 2015 to 2018. I don't want to revisit them. And there's so many like little things that will have been forgotten that, you know, it's not just the big things. It's not just the round 23s and the, you know, losing to Sydney with no one left on the bench. It's all the little things as well that'll be forgotten by now. So I don't want to tackle that. I'm just leaving that list alone. But I guarantee you at some point someone will come to you and say, oh, have you seen this before? And it'll be the great list because it just seems to bob up every few months again.
Well, now I feel like we've ended on a sour note.
I could do a list of all the good things that have happened. It won't be a long list.
It'll be a little pamphlet.
Yeah, it'll be like when Jeff Farmer kicked 9 goals in the second half, and not much more after that.
It'll just be a picture of Allen Jakovich.
Yeah, and with me saying I blame this man for you know, I was sort of a half-assed fan until he came along, and then I was thrown into the mix forever. So, thanks, Jacko.
Yeah. All right, so that is another edition of the Demonland podcast in the can. So if you're listening to this podcast, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We'd like that, or 4 stars, or if you're really depressed, 3 or 2, something. Other places you can get us, demonland.com, obviously, at Demonland on Twitter, facebook.com/Demonland31 on Facebook, and Instagram, we're Demonland31. And with that, we'll play some lovely 80s tunes to take us out.
Simpler times.
Yep. Simpler times it is. All right, guys. We'll be back next week. Hopefully hearing my tales of survival of a trip to Perth. All right. Go Dees.